Mike Scarborough from TigerBait.com joins me right now. LSU and head coach Ed Orgeron are parting ways. It's never boring here in Baton Rouge. Mike, how you doing?
Doing good. It's look, I after they beat Florida, I didn't expect what we got yesterday, but I also do think there's some positives in the way it was handled. I think the joint press conference last night now kind of puts that behind Ed Orgeron, and they can move forward. And I think they're going to play loose. I think they're going to maybe get some wins here. But now it's like, what are the ramifications for recruiting? How long is the process going to last? Who are the main candidates? And I think that's going to be all the talk for weeks to come. I don't know how much people are going to be looking at football. I think that'll be more like a distraction. And so I think everything we do from here on out is going to be who's the next coach going to be, who will their coordinators be if that's the guy, and so that's what we're doing right now at Tiger Bait.
Yeah, a bit unusual. Typically, when Les Miles was fired, no press conference with Les, just a statement. Johnny Jones, when he was fired, press conference, Joe Oliva, Johnny Jones not there. Jerry DiNardo, I guess we go back, when he was fired, he did not appear at a press conference. I think, and then Curly Holman, when he was fired, no press conference. So it's unusual for an athletic director and a fired head coach to appear at a press conference together. And Mike, what's also unusual to me is that a guy who knows he's not coming back now has to navigate 5 games and an open date. That's a lot of real estate for a guy not coming back. This is not a Hal Hunter coach one game and the season's over. This is it's interesting.
Yeah, and I'm gonna be real curious to see what the coaching shows look like at TJ Ribs on Wednesday night, and how he operates going forward. It's going to be very interesting what the type of calls are going to be, and I think he's going to have fun with it. Obviously, I think he would prefer that this wasn't his situation and he was still a coach and would be for years to come. But I think obviously Woodward, like they stated last night, had been honest with him throughout the last several years, and it was trending downwards. And of course, Orgeron did get a few little comments off last night that I think might have, which was maybe the worry going into that 7 p.m. joint press conference.
Yeah.
But I think, look, I think what's very important for LSU is the coaches need to continue to recruit. They need to impress upon all the top prospects in Louisiana, because this is a marquee year in the state of Louisiana, one of the top 2 or 3 recruiting years in the state of Louisiana this century. That LSU is still the school for them, the best place for them to be. And look, these guys are getting paid. They have interaction with these recruits every day. But obviously, right off the bat, this morning, Aaron Anderson, the fantastic wide receiver from Carr, reopened the recruiting process. And I knew earlier in the year when Nick Saban extended him an offer that, look, there's offers that Alabama extends, and then there's guys that he truly covets. And the first time I laid eyes on Aaron Anderson, I knew that was a Nick Saban difference maker type of wide receiver. And you're talking about a guy who's probably about 5'9", 5'10", but he's lethal in space. He's a return man. And, the Carr coaches are pretty adamant about their kids. Once they commit, it's over with. But once Ed Orgeron was negotiated and agreed to separate, that gave Aaron Anderson his out. He had been to Alabama multiple times. So we're going to see if the excitement of a new coach can maybe reverse that. But I think it's going to be tough. He was at Alabama for a visit this past weekend.
Yeah, you're not Johnny come lately on that guy. You've been talking about him for a long time and how much you love this kid and how much of a difference maker he could be. I think, did you compare him to Josh Reed a little bit? Is that what you said?
Yeah, and I do. And I think, he compares himself to Tyreek Hill with the Chiefs. He's that kind of player. And, I say, look, if he would have been in last year's recruiting class, I would have had him ahead of Brian Thomas, Chris Hilton, Jack Besh, Neighbors. I think he's that good. And, some of the other outlets that have had him is a 3-star, and I think one of them had him as the 47th best wide receiver in the nation.
Yeah.
Idiots. They're idiots. He's that good.
Before the season started, we talked about, there's never any negativity in the preseason for the most part. It's kind of like, okay, they're going to be good. They're going to bounce back. And we talked about if LSU would bounce back, combined with this recruiting class in the state of Louisiana, Ed Orgeron could recover. Well, he's not going to recover. And so now the key is for LSU to not lose this recruiting class and not have these guys separate.
Yeah, and see, and that depends. Look, you've got an early signing period. A good number of these 22 kids are midterm grads. So I think one by one, maybe you're not necessarily going to see wholesale decommitments, but I think one by one, you're going to see some kids, go and take official visits places and have a backup plan just in case. You could have a top flight head coach that ends up getting the job, but depending on the position or who the coordinator might not be what a kid thinks is best for him, despite their love for LSU. So I think the sooner in early December or very late November that Scott Woodward could name a guy, the better, because I still think there's an opportunity to not only finish off the Louisiana kids, whether it's Quincy Wiggins, Shaz Preston, getting Aaron Anderson back, Le'Veon Moss, of course, at Struma, and others that, and then you go, they're still in it for Harold Perkins, a linebacker in Texas. The sooner you can get a guy on board and have multiple weeks before that early signing period, the better.
I saw Ascension Catholic play on Friday. Tap, is LSU just going to let him go, or you think they might try to get him to commit?
Yeah, I know that they're still recruiting him. He's been on campus since he committed to Texas, but I tend to think that one might stick.
Okay,
but we'll see.
All right. Yeah, it's a whole different calendar than the one you and I grew up on. I think, Jared DiNardo got the job in January or something like that, with this new signing period a little bit before Christmas. And when Scott Woodward said yesterday, the search begins now for the new head coach, you and I probably laughed to ourselves. Yeah, right. It's been going on in his head probably since he became the AD, or at least after the UCLA loss this year. So that's going to be key, getting a guy in quickly and moving ahead with the staff.
And look, Scott Woodward is very much a recruiting junkie. He knows the names of the players just as good as I do. He follows it religiously, and he knows how vital this recruiting year is, no doubt about it. So I think that, like you said, that is in the back of his mind to hold on to many of these guys. And of course, it starts at the top: Walker Howard, Will Campbell, Emory Jones, and others. I mean, it's just such a very good class at multiple positions.
And circling back to the press conference real quick, Ed Orgeron did not get emotional. It was not like when he was named the head coach and he talked about his parents and he cried and everything. I'd wondered if he would be a little emotional there was none of that. He was pretty stone-faced the whole time. I'm not picking. I thought he mentioned money maybe a little too many times. I thought it was a little tacky mentioning all the money. Whatever, he's getting his. As somebody told me, if my worst day is, hey, you don't have to work anymore and here's 17 million, that's not a bad gig. But I thought they did a pretty good job up there in a very awkward situation.
Yeah, I do. I give kudos to Scott Woodward for that, because that's not something that you have ever really seen before. I can't think of it. I'm sure it has existed in other places, but I don't know how much of a talk they had. This is what we're going to do. This is what we should say. But what I do think for Ed, it was good for him, is that I think had this thing played out for weeks and there was no answers to whether this was it for Coach O, and then Woodward did it after the A&M game, I think these coming weeks would have chipped away at Ed and how the fan base views him, particularly if there would have been some brutal losses coming up. Mm-hmm. And I think because of the way he's going to go out, I think that if there's any fans that harbor any ill feelings, and I don't think there's a whole lot. I think just about everybody, despite knowing that it's time for a change, they still like Ed Orgeron. So yeah. I don't think he's going to go years in the future where, they feel like it's not time yet to bring him back and wait between quarters of a home game. I think he'll be able to come back sooner than a lot of people.
Yeah.
And that's a positive.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, absolutely. And there's a lot of TMZ smut out there, Mike, that that we don't want to get into. But I think it is a fair question, and the question was given to me many times: did he lose his focus after 2019? And I think that's the big question. Did he lose focus and his edge? He earned a lot of money and whatnot, but kind of like Mike did. Because go ahead.
And that's one of the reasons what's different from college coaches and NFL coaches. The college coaches have to put in so many more hours in a year than NFL coaches do. The recruiting never stops. The vacation time is minuscule, considering the number of hours they work. They're there sometimes at 5 a.m. and work till 10, 11 at night.
Right.
And so, when you're being photographed and you're in Destin and LaBerge and whatever else and all those places, trying to let your hair down or whatever, it's really impossible for a coach. Their ability to have those moments is very small, and you got to pick your spots and you got to be smart about it. And I think some of that bit Ed Orgeron.
Yeah. Yeah, some of those pictures I saw, I mean, if someone, hey, coach, will you take a picture with me? Sure. I mean, what if he says, no, I'm not taking a picture. I saw Coach O. He's so stuck up. He wouldn't take a picture with me, So I know how that goes if they're in a pool or whatever. But anyway, and you mentioned that Joe Brady, a lot of people bring his name up, but I just don't see that, right? I mean, he does not want to get up in front of booster meetings or the TAF and go on these speaking circuits and recruit. He just wants to go into a building and coach football. College football doesn't appeal to him, does it?
Yeah, I think he enjoyed the football camps, but I think going on the road when he was at LSU and going up and seeing Caleb Williams, who's now the phenom quarterback at Oklahoma, I think that stuff just did not. He did not enjoy that one bit, and so I think he's going to stick with the NFL. I mean, those guys get a lot of downtime in the offseason, man. They get a lot of rounds of golf in. They get to spend 2 or 3 weeks in whatever island they want. They've got that kind of time in the NFL. In college football, you do not.
Right. Let's just have some fun discussion on possible head coaching candidates. Billy Napier is a rising star at UL Lafayette, and I'm just wondering if someday you don't want to be the guy that said, man, we could have had him, but now he is at school X doing well. Now, you and I both know, spending time in Lafayette and Baton Rouge, that there is going to be a contingent of the LSU fan base that says we are not hiring the coach of the Raging Cajuns. We're too good for that. But he is young. He is coming up. He's coached with Saban. He's coached with Dabo. It seems like he's got a great pedigree.
I tell you what, I've got obviously spent a number of years in Lafayette, and I've got a lot of friends over there who absolutely have Napier on their list, and it's surprising. But I think they have him a little bit further down than some of the others. Mm-hmm. And I think it's Lafayette and the folks there that have watched Napier and what he does there, LSU people. I think they're like a lot of people anywhere else in the state where they've got Lane Kiffin or Cristobal, James, and then Napier would be in that next tier with, your Fickles, your Matt Campbell's, coach at Coastal Carolina, Boston College. I mean, there's some, look, I think this year, obviously, Woodward has got a phenomenal list to choose from compared to what Joe Oliva had in 2016. I think the talent pool is significantly better. So then I start wondering, look, who is the, and I've been saying it for weeks, who is the Jay Johnson? Like, who is the guy that's, you're maybe not have up there with Corbin and Vitello, the guy that's out there who's done some fantastic things, but he's not flashy. So who is that guy? Who is the Jay Johnson of football in the football search? And, is it maybe a Dave Aranda? Look what he's doing at Baylor right now. Mm-hmm. He could absolutely be the Jay Johnson of this class. So I know Scott Woodward thinks the world of him, but I think a lot of people are really focusing on Lane Kiffin because a lot of people envision what he could do with LSU's offensive talent, the athletes that this state produces every year. And of course, you would want to match him up with a defensive coordinator that can get it done. So we'll see.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think Lane Kiffin would win big at LSU. I think with his offensive mind, he would score points. For guys like me and you, he'd be a thrill to cover. That would be a lot of fun. And like you said, with resources at LSU that he doesn't have at Ole Miss, Scott Woodward says, hey, Lane, here's $2.5, here's $3 million. Go get the best defensive coordinator you can. Let that guy coach defense. I think the on-the-field product could be very, very exciting. Now, the Title IX stuff going on at LSU and some other things off the field. Does Lane Kiffin have some off-the-field stuff? I don't know.
I don't think he does. I think a lot of the stuff that was going on with him 8 years ago, until he threw his headset down in pregame a couple of weeks ago at Alabama, he really had kind of, shed a lot of that, I think. And then that course, he did that, and then they got really hammered by Alabama, and that was not a good look for him.
But he handled it well after. He had jokes with popcorn and stuff. He made fun of himself. I thought he handled it well after it blew up in his face. Go ahead.
Yeah. So, look, I tend to think, and look, I think he's great for college football. I enjoy watching him from afar. But I keep saying, I think after you've had a couple of kind of cartoon character coaches in a row, do you want a third?
Yeah.
And so I tend to think, maybe and look who Woodward's hired. Yeah, Mulkey's got a big personality, but boy, she's all business. I mean, so you want that all business guy that, of course, you'll sing Dolly Parton in the post-game press conference, but she is very much like Nick Saban when it comes to doing her job and the amount of hours and so forth. So,
yeah,
I don't know. I tend to think he wants a daddy. I don't know that he wants the middle son.
Yeah, and for the longest time, Lane Kiffin had a reputation of being kind of a petulant child, somebody who kept failing his way upwards. He had an NFL job. What was he, 33 years old? He's a head coach of the Raiders. He leaves the Tennessee Vols after 1 year. He makes those comments about beating Florida and singing Rocky Top all night long when Urban Meyer is kind of one of the kings of college football and whatnot. But he's older now. I'm sure he's learned a few things.
Yeah, I think, look, it's I just think what Woodward's going to have to choose from, and of course Stephanie is his right hand person, and of course she was a big part of the hires previous with Jay Johnson and Mulkey. So, and then you wonder, look, he likes to go big. Is there somebody we're not even talking about? I mean, could he pull off something crazy like reaching out to Ryan Day's agent and feeling that one out?
Right. What about Dabo Swinney? I mean, that would be crazy, right?
Yeah. Of course, you want to talk about the likability factor with Lane Kiffin. I think that goes in reverse with Dabo. There's not a whole lot of likability, and that's one of the things we talk about Mario Cristobal a whole lot. I think he's the guy that most Alabama fans want, but a lot of people think it would be Dabo. No, Alabama fans can't stand Dabo. So,
well, I kind of wonder, Mike. I mean, I kind of wonder, like you said about Jay Johnson, I'm wondering if some of these names that are out there or take our eye off the ball, and Cristobal is the guy over here, because I just look at his resume, for an example. He's 51 years old. He's a young 51. He's got a great track record with offensive linemen. Ding, ding, ding. And he also recruited at Alabama for 4 years or so under Saban, and gave LSU headaches with guys like Cam Robinson leaving Louisiana to go to Alabama. So in that regard, and I guess technically too, I don't know how much this is going to mean to certain people, but he could go down as a minority. I believe he might be Cuban or something like that. Cuban American. So that would play to some parts of the fan base as well. So I'm just wondering.
Hey, we can have plantains and Cuban pork sandwiches and tailgates. I mean, Louisiana people will adapt in a hurry. I keep saying it all the time. OLU. LSU needs to strive to be OLU. The DBU, the wide receiver U, that stuff's always going to be there. But the fact that he is an offensive line guru, and like you said, came into Louisiana, got Cam Robinson away from Frank Wilson and LSU at the time, and recruited nationally to Alabama, and he's got that reputation. So I that's always been the deal. How many years do we go into a season at LSU, and the biggest question mark is the offensive line? And I think not only with the 25, but the +7, if you were to get a guy like him on board, what might he be able to do with that +7 to ride LSU's offensive line room in a hurry?
Yeah, and even in 2019, LSU was coming off the 2018 season where I think they gave up 5 sacks at Florida, might have been 11 tackles for loss, and it was basically the same guys. And look, some talented players, Damian Lewis, Sadiq Charles, Lloyd Cushenberry, but I think the offense they ran in number 9, Joe Burrow, might have camouflaged some of the deficiencies.
Yeah, but I think it's a deal where you want to be able to say, hey, look at the number of offensive linemen that are on NFL rosters right now. And that's still something that LSU has had to fight off in recruiting.
Yeah.
Because it's being used against them.
When Andrew Whitworth is still kind of the first name that comes up, and he played at LSU, 2005 last year, 16 years ago. that might be a problem. But
You went
so
more than a hand. You went more than a handful of years where Joe Barksdale was one of the only guys from the Les Miles era,
yeah,
and he came to LSU as a defensive lineman.
yeah. There are some guys I kind of forget about, like Ethan Posick's still out there, right? And Lael Collins has
Trey
some different.
Turner.
Yeah, Trey Turner. Yeah, what a pro he's been.
Yeah, and that was a guy that Les Miles thought it was ridiculous that he went out early. That he told him that his grade was much lower and he wouldn't make it on a team. And well, he was an All Pro within what, a year or two.
Yeah, I remember I was surprised.
Starting immediately.
Yeah. Okay, and so LSU has their first ever African American president at the school. LSU has never had an African American head football coach. They've had basketball coaches and Johnny Jones, Trent Johnson, Pokey Chapman, Nicky Fargas. And some people would just say, that race shouldn't be even a topic at all. Hire the best guy. But I think Mel Tucker's name at Michigan State will come up, right? Assistant coach under Nick Saban way back when. I hear a real morally grounded guy too, in his faith and whatnot. And then there's James Franklin, which, Mike, if you win 9 games at Vanderbilt, that's a miracle. So his name may come up as well in terms of African-American candidates for the job.
Yeah. And I think, I'm talking to a guy up at Oregon because I was trying to get information on Cristobal, which his buyout is $9 million right now.
Ooh.
But I want to say it's prorated. It drops in January. January would be his anniversary date. So I'm assuming it's less than that because it's prorated with each month's salary. So, but his buyout might be like around $5 or $6 million, which I don't know if that would make Scott Woodward blink or not. But when I was talking to him, this guy obviously knows the Pac-12. He just says it's automatic that James Franklin is going to take the USC job, that he's already out there inquiring about which coaches would join him in Los Angeles. So we'll see if that's the case. But and then, of course, there's also Eric Bieniemy's name, but he's an NFL coach, and you wouldn't be able to get him till January. And like we talked about earlier, you got to have this recruiting class sewed up.
Yeah. All right. Well, very interesting stuff. And it's interesting. I think it's even surprised the LSU administrators, Mike, that LSU played their first game, their best game of the year this past weekend. Where did that come from? I mean, a week earlier at Lexington, they're getting criticized for quitting, for giving up. They get doubled up by Kentucky and Lexington. Before the game, before the Florida game, you got all these guys on the sidelines on scooters and in boots. It's like an 11 a.m. kickoff. And the kids showed up and the crowd showed up a lot better than people expected. And the crowd was like, okay, you guys are going to play hard today. Well, we're going to cheer today. And they stayed to the end. And it was a great day for LSU football. And I come out of church at noon on Sunday. Oh, Ed Orgeron's out. So we don't expect LSU to beat Alabama. Stranger things have happened, but we don't expect it. But what if Ed Orgeron, if they play like they played this past weekend, they could beat Ole Miss on the road. They could beat Arkansas at home. They could beat Texas A&M at home. They could beat, obviously, UL Monroe at home. What if they go 8-4? He might. He won't go out on top, but he'll go out with some, positive momentum.
I think there's going to be some wins in there. And what that also shows you is, despite all those injuries, both starting defensive ends, both your starting corners, and on and on and on. The list is insane. I was sent a screen grab of the UCLA, the printout roster we get in the media, game week from the UCLA game week, with all the lines marked through the missing players.
Yep.
It's crazy. It looks like some sort of government document with all the redacted names in it.
It's Watergate. It's Nixon, huh?
Yeah. It just shows you also the level of talent, even at your number 2s and 3s and an inspired football team. Everybody counted them out. I thought LSU was going to lose 35-21. A lot of people I know bet the house, given the points. And so what does that do for Dan Mullen? All of a sudden now he's on the hot seat after that performance. But, you just knew when they gave up that Hail Mary at the end of the first half and they were getting the ball to start the second half, you just assumed, well, that's going to be it. Well, that team never quit fighting. And so it was a pleasant surprise for LSU fans. I had a buddy of mine send me sweet tickets, parking pass, great suite, all the food and trimmings. I couldn't give those tickets away till Friday night. So those two friends of mine who ended up using them had a great time. And I think every LSU fan that was there Saturday had a fantastic time because the Tigers played so well.
Yeah. Yeah, we got a shot of Ed Orgeron with the team at the end when they played the alma mater, and his face kind of dipped at one point, and you could tell there was something different. He knew, that what was coming. But like I said again, LSU baseball last year, by their standards, was pretty rough for a long time, and the fan base was getting really nasty with Maneri. And Maneri did make it to Omaha, but he made a nice little run to a super regional. I'm kind of wondering, well, hey, can Coach O do something, similar? Can they make it to a Gator Bowl or some sort of bowl that's kind of nice, play in the sun in Florida? And maybe, I don't think they'll go 8-4, but if they do and win a bowl and go 9-4, well, not too shabby.
Yeah, I mean, could we actually see a scenario where Ed Orgeron's coaching the bowl and the new coach is sitting in the press box? We've seen that before.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it'll be fascinating to watch moving forward. Mike Scarborough, go ahead.
Yeah, and I think that would be a positive for this team to get those bowl practices.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, something they missed out on last year. We kind of forget that they didn't go to a bowl game last year. So
yeah,
that would be a positive for sure. Mike Scarborough, tell everyone about your website and the content.
Yeah, we're going to be covering this backwards and forwards at tigerbait.com. Go check us out. And shoot, it's already the busy season. We got women's basketball on top of men's basketball and fall baseball. It never stops. So we got to cover at tigerbait.com.
All right, Mike. Appreciate it, man. We'll see you soon.
All right, Jacques. Thanks.